Morning, everybody. Thanks for bearing with us while we start the webinar. I'm just going to let you know we had a few technical issues a moment ago where the sound wasn't working for myself or the. I think it's now working. So if you can hear me on the left-hand side of the screen, you should see an attendee chat. Could you just say like where you're listening from? If you can hear what I'm saying, we'll just make sure that people can hear it. Tom can hear, great. So where are you listening from, Tom? Where are people in Doncaster? Welcome, Paul. Thank you. I'm glad this is working. From Hull, from London. Our last webinar, we had someone from Italy and someone from Australia. Let's see if we can top that. Manchester, Cambridge, Brighton, Lewisham, love it. Oh, okay, great. Brighton, hi, Emily. Okay, super, Aberdeen. Okay, so I'm glad everyone can hear me. So if you have, I see some people are putting in questions to the presenters. If you can put them into the left-hand side, that'll help us out because then everyone can see them. So if you have a question for a presenter or any of the topics that are discussed today, pop those in the left-hand side. We'll try to answer them all at the end when we have a Q&A time. We've got two people coming to speak with us here today. I'll just show you guys the agenda. By the way, my name is Maddie. I work at Food Power. I'm based in Sassane in London. I'm going to take about 5 minutes to go over a bit of what's happening at the national level. Then I'm going to pass it over to Mel, who's in Greenwich, to talk about their work on holiday hunger. And then Katie from Cardiff will be joining us to speak about the new school holiday enrichment program in Wales. And then we'll have a Q&A. And again, if you can put those questions in the attendee chat, it'll help us quite a bit. And we'll try to answer them all at the end. So a little bit of context for you. As I'm sure most people listening know, the issue of food poverty and how it affects children in the UK is quite severe. And most recently, we've been seeing a lot of the numbers going up, unfortunately. I pulled out just a few stats I found over the last few weeks researching this topic, and that for 10% of children, school lunch can be the biggest meal of the day. Nationally, almost 3/4 of teachers are saying that holiday hunger negatively affects education. And for parents earning below £25,000 a year, almost 1/3 are skipping meals during the holidays so their children can eat, and nearly 2/3 can't always afford food outside of term time. And if you look at people who are earning less than £15,000 a year, this rises even more significantly. All this to say that as a part of the Food Power program, we've each year we're looking at one theme of what we want to talk about and kind of bring together speakers and coordinated action on. And so this year we're looking at maximizing family income, which is why, and for us, we really felt that children's access to food can be obviously quite impacted by the income of the family. And so we thought that including in this push work that focuses on increasing uptake of free school meals, as well as holiday food programs and breakfast clubs should be integral to this. So I just wanted to fill everyone in on a few things that are happening nationally on this issue before we get into more of the local level. And by national, like at so in January, I'm not sure if everyone was following, but there was a second reading of the School Holidays, Meals and Activities Bill that was put forward by Frank Fields. And this bill would require local authorities to facilitate the delivery of programs that provide free meals and activities for children during the holidays. It was quite exciting. It received support, cross-party backing from over 130 MPs. And for the groups that were campaigning on it, they were quite pleased that the government was generally quite supportive, but they did decide that more evidence was needed to design an effective program. So during that second reading, they announced that the government will commission research on the issue and will also be targeting, will be supporting holiday provision pilots over this summer to develop best practice and decide next steps. They have yet to announce the pilot locations, but we have heard that they're keen to work with existing services. And they also haven't announced what amount of funding or the other details of the research, but we're going to try to keep the Food Power Network quite informed of this as we go forward. The other big news that came up just yesterday, very timely for this webinar, is that the government announced that more than 1,700 schools are going to benefit from £26 million going towards breakfast clubs in disadvantaged areas. This activity is due to start in the spring, and it's going to focus on offering a healthy meal plus extracurricular activities, and it's going to be funded through the Sugary Drinks Levy, and it'll be in partnership with Family Action and Magic Breakfast. So this was very big news yesterday that we thought would be worth sharing with everyone. Again, the details aren't fully out there yet, and we don't know where they'll be working in particular, but they did say in their announcement they'll be focusing on areas of disadvantage, in particular in the 12 Department of Education opportunities areas. So I would say stay tuned on that front as well. And then finally, there's been quite a bit of campaigning going on recently around the government's proposal for a new earnings limit for those on universal credit and in terms of eligibility for free school meals. So they put forward a motion to not have that go forward. It lost, which was quite expected by those campaigning on it. It's been spearheaded by the Children's Society and Child Poverty Action Group, who have estimated that if this does go through, it will impact around 1 million children in the country. So this afternoon, the debate will be held in the House of Lords on this, and we'll see what comes out of it. There's been quite a lot of public response, but we'll see what the government decides in the end. Just to put it in context, originally everyone who was on universal credit would receive free school meals, but this would be putting on an earnings limit of £7,400. So it would have quite a big impact. So I just wanted to set the context that that's what's happening at the national level. And before we dive into our case studies, I'm trying to whiz through this a little bit just because we started a bit late, but I wanted to just mention 3 other examples that we'd heard of happening around the country that I thought were definitely worth sharing, and that relate to free school meals, holiday hunger, and breakfast clubs, and kind of examples of hopefully feeling a bit inspired. So in Blackpool, all the way in 2013, so a bit ahead of the curve compared to all the action we're seeing now on these issues, but Blackpool Council actually implemented universal entitlement of free breakfast milk for primary school children, and they've since served 11,000 breakfasts in 33 schools. And there's been a number of research papers published by Northumbria University on this topic. So if anyone's looking for good evidence of the need and the impact of free breakfast, or in particular universal entitlement to free breakfast, I would highly recommend checking out the Blackpool case study and Northumbria's published research on it. Additionally, in Havering Council in London, they took a really unique approach last year, and their Learning and Achievement team compared the housing benefit list to the free school meal uptake list and identified just in one school 250 children who weren't registered. They then kind of flipped the way of getting involved and turned it into an opt-out system so that people who were on that list were automatically enrolled, and only 10 then opted out. So it was a really effective way of quite effectively increasing enrollment. And they then rolled out that opt-out system to the entire council, which has brought in over £300,000 in pupil premium funding. So I thought that was quite a unique thing. We've got a bit more information about that in a report that Sustain does annually called Beyond the Food Bank. And that was one of the case studies featured last year in it. So if you want to read more about that, check out Beyond the Food Bank and look for Havering. They've since rolled it out to 80 schools. So a great way for the council to take action on free school meals. And then more recently, just in the last few weeks, North Lanarkshire announced that it's going to implement 365 days of food for children, which is an incredibly ambitious and quite unprecedented approach in the UK, where they are going to make sure that children have access to food, not just during the holidays, but on weekends as well, which is 175 days, which is really an impressive and exciting thing for them to be taking on. So they're going to run it out of 23 community centers. They're just starting to do the pilots, but it'll be rolled out shortly at an estimated cost of £500,000. So what all that to say is that there's a lot going on at the local level to help plug the gaps in terms of children's access to food. I'd say that there's quite mixed results from the government in terms of what they're doing to tackle the root causes of food poverty, and we'll see how the things around the holiday food bill comes out, as well as the free school meal eligibility comes. So today what we wanted to do is hear from some members of Food Power about what they're doing on these issues. And so I'm first going to hand over to Mel Taylor, who is in Greenwich, who's going to talk to us a bit about her their work in that area. So Mel, if you want to join us, and again, if is everyone still hearing me okay? If you can't hear me, give me a little chat on the side, but otherwise I'm going to pass it over to Mel.
Thanks, Maddie. Hi, everyone. So yes, my name is Mel. I work for GCDA, which is the Greenwich Cooperative Development Agency, and also I coordinate the Good Food in Greenwich partnership, which is part of the Sustainable Food Cities Network. So last year we got funding from the Children's Health Fund to deliver some holiday meals. The year before we'd had a small amount from the Social Kitchen, the Mayor's Fund, to sort of trial a pilot. And then this was a kind of extension of that. So, hang on a minute. Oh, sorry. Yay. So what's it all about? So we're Good Food in Greenwich is a sustainable food city. And that's the kind of overall umbrella of all of the work we do around food in Greenwich. We have a very active food poverty subgroup which oversees this work, and my colleague Nicola in public health has written a very comprehensive food poverty needs assessment. So from that needs assessment, we could understand the level of need and also the areas. So she did a lot of mapping, so we knew whereabouts there was the most pockets of poverty. We were really looking at a way that we could provide the maximum amount of provision with the minimum amount of resources, because as we know there's not a huge amount of money available. So we thought, how could we kind of maximize what's already existing in the borough without that we could input into. So we created a partnership with CACT, which are the Charlton Athletic Community Trust, and they run the youth services in the borough. GLL Better, who run the adventure playgrounds, among other things. FareShare, who deliver food surplus in the borough as well. And obviously the council. So that partnership we sort of met to discuss how we could deliver. And the model was that we centrally produced the food, because we have quite a large cafe that we had capacity, so we could centrally produce meals, and you'll see the picture there, and they were vac packed. So we used FareShare food as much as possible. The food was made and then frozen, and then we have a driver who then delivered to the venues. We used some of the money to top up the food, because obviously, FareShare, you're never quite sure what you're going to get, and sometimes we had boxes of oranges and sometimes we didn't, so we could always top up with buying fruit and other things to add to the meals. We recruited about 7 or 8 volunteers, and then we had GCDA staff who were there at the centres to help the staff there set up, serve, clear away. The venues themselves registered the kids and kept tallies of the meals and the number of served for reporting. Yes, so these are just a couple of the centres. So we had 3 adventure playgrounds and 2 youth centres, and they were all in areas of very high deprivation. And because we didn't want to do targeted provision, we wanted to do universal provision. I think there was a slide earlier was talking about the trying to reduce stigma. So we had a universal provision, but we used centres that were in areas of high deprivation. And we had everything. So on the right, you can see a beautiful, amazing kitchen that you could create huge numbers of meals in. And right on the left there's there was like just a tiny little cubbyhole kitchen that had a sink and a kind of a little baby baling oven. So it was kind of lots of different facilities that we had to try and contend with. And these are our lovely volunteers who were there. So we had 225 children register across the 5 centres. As I said, 3 adventure playgrounds and 2 youth centres with 1 or 2 drops a week. But what we were finding is, say, for example, in the first week, there was hardly any kids around. The weather was atrocious. It poured with rain every day. But because of the way the food was vac packed and frozen, it meant that it could be stored. And then once it was defrosted, it had a shelf life of 3 to 4 days. So the staff were then able to kind of carry on serving the meals throughout the week. If the day that the drop happened, there weren't many kids, or for whatever reason, then they just carried on serving throughout the week. There were 48 deliveries across the summer, and we did it over 6 weeks, which I think possibly if we were to do something like this again, I probably wouldn't do the first week, because that really was, and most of the centre said that is the week that most of the kids will go away. We served 1,400 meals, and as I said, because the staff was so amazing, they got so on board with it, they carried on serving, so there was very, very little waste, even to the point where one drop was on a Friday, and one of the staff said, well, we're having a big barbecue tomorrow, so she just took all of the food and just served it at the barbecue the next day. We had 7 volunteers who were all amazing and just turned up every week and just got on with it. So some of the challenges we had with the recipes, we tried to kind of create things that the kids would want to eat, but obviously that vac pack method is quite limited with what you can do. It has to be sort of pasta sauces, curries, stews, that kind of thing, which some were really popular with the kids, but others less so. Particularly when the weather did improve and it got hot and we were serving, bean chili. We also only did vegetarian food for food safety kind of issues, but also accessibility, so everyone could eat it. And some of the kids were less keen. We could occasionally, if FareShare kind of delivered some chicken, we cooked the chicken off and backpacked that separately, so it could be served separately. Food safety compliance, we had RBG, Environmental Health, was really supportive and helped us kind of get all of our processes in place. So we had all of the food temperature records, and there you can see the picture of doing the temperature checks to make sure that we're at the right temperature before serving. Allergy information and compliance. So occasionally FareShare would sort of phone and say, like, we've got a big excess of cereal bars or something, whatever, so we could go and pick it up, or crackers. But obviously just ensuring that the allergy kind of compliance was always adhered to, particularly with volunteers and other members of staff, that, so that was occasionally a bit of a worry. And data collection. So as I'm sure if any of you have delivered these kind of programs, trying to ensure that you have all of the children registered is always a bit of a challenge. But these were some of the highlights. So just of the kids just kind of getting on with it. We had wraps a few times, and that was really popular. The leaves you can see in the top row in the middle, they were grown at one of the adventure playgrounds. So they grew quite a lot of salad. So we incorporated that, which was fab. You can see the young people queuing there at one of the adventure playgrounds, and then our volunteers kind of constantly washing up and sorting all the clearing away. So highlights, so partnership working was brilliant. We've created a really good partnership across some really big players in the borough. The staff at the venues were incredible, and I think going forward, we don't have any money this year, but the staff feel that heating food up in that way is a really doable thing within their existing capacity. So that's really positive. Just making contact with volunteers in the local areas who are really keen to keep moving forward with things and help out has been really great. Fair Share have been great as well, just, giving us loads of, so that on the right there, they had a load of breakfast cereal. So I went along and just picked up as much as I could fit in my car and then delivered those to all the different, so then they could start offering breakfast as well, which was great. And then some of the comments by the participants and the staff. So, you can read those. Great to see positive role models, great discussions on food topics, great opportunity to try new foods. I learned meals could be prepared without meat. So some of them that was quite a step. I normally eat chips and chicken from takeaways. I've enjoyed food I'd never eaten before, such as bean, I can't read that bit at the end. I think it says bean curry. So that was great. But as I say, some of the recipes didn't go down well, but we went and invested in chili sauces and, things like that the kids could add to make it more palatable. So next steps, as I say, we haven't got any funding to deliver this year, but we are hosting an event tomorrow, actually. So if anyone, I think I saw Vinda there, if you want to come along, it's tomorrow afternoon at the West Greenwich Library from 2:30. And we're just getting together any interested parties within the borough to find out who wants to do what and who can support that. So I think Good Food in Greenwich has capacity to be able to kind of help people set these things up. We've got a lot of experience now. We've got all of the procedures that someone would need to do that. We had a couple of students with us who did a huge amount of research online and got together a kind of how-to guide. So using, there's so much information out there, so they pulled a lot of it together into one place and kind of a little step-by-step guide if you want to set up a holiday meal program, how you can do that. And I was just in a meeting with our school meals provider in the borough, who've identified a food provider who can deliver sauces and a carbohydrate item. So it could be a pasta sauce, a curry, a stir-fry sort of sauce, with a carbohydrate item for £1.35 per portion, and they meet the school nutritional standards. So in terms of affordability, we know that the model that we use using existing provision it did work in those centres, and we have 5 adventure playgrounds and 5 youth centres. So we could look to expand that. Obviously, that's just plugging into existing provision. But what we can do is also work with the staff, and the staff at those places, they all do lots of activities already. So the kids are getting that kind of additional enrichment anyway, and so we're kind of thinking of how we can plug the food in. But I think if we were to do it again, we need to promote more to the targeted families. We wanted to do it universal provision, as I said, but I think we would then look to go to the local schools in the area and say, look, this is happening, so can you highlight this to the families that will kind of need it most. So that's us. That's me. Thank you for listening.
Great. Thank you, Mel. That is really interesting. I love the quotes by children at the end, particularly that one learned that meals could be prepared without meat. So thanks for sharing that. We're just going to pass over to Katie now. I just wanted to say, I realized that our logo and my name in the chat is Sustainable Food Cities. Food Power and Sustainable Food Cities, we share this webinar platform, and it wouldn't let me change them. So the webinar will be recorded and will be on the Food Power website at the end of this in case anyone is interested. But that's why you're seeing that come up. So, okay, over to you, Katie. Are you there?
I am. Hello, everyone. So this is my first time presenting on a webinar, so bear with me. I've been told what to expect. So I wanted to share with you today our experience of developing a holiday provision programme in Cardiff. Although this is in a Welsh context, I hope that some of the lessons we've learned are going to be of use to anyone seeking to set up or expand provisions in their area. It's great to see that we've got all 4 of the UK nations represented on the webinar today. And as Maddie said, there's just fantastic stuff going on across the UK in this area. And, you know, this is just one example of how we've done it. But it's really important to say that it's so important to look at how it you know, the model works for your particular area using your resources. I wanted to pick up on a couple of things actually that Maddie said at the beginning. The first one about the example with linking free school meals to housing benefits. This is something we actually did in Cardiff quite a while ago at point of signing up for benefits. So this has had quite a good impact on our free school meal uptake. The other thing that we've developed in Cardiff in all of the secondary schools is that we now have a completely cashless system for school meals, and that's currently being rolled out in primary schools as well. I was also just going to touch on breakfast clubs as well, because in Wales we actually have a piece of legislation around breakfast clubs, in that where there's any need from a school to provide a breakfast club, that school has to provide one. However, I have to say, just putting on the service doesn't necessarily mean that the right people are accessing. So one of the big challenges that we have in Cardiff is that those people that really need a free breakfast aren't necessarily the ones that are getting the free breakfast. So, you know, people use provision as a, you know, childcare so people can get to work early. And those people that need to get to breakfast clubs and things necessarily sometimes don't have the parents that will get up early enough in the morning to actually get their child there. So that's a big challenge, and I'm sure some of the research picks that up from Northumbria. So back on to holiday provision. So Food Cardiff is part of the Sustainable Food City Network. I've headed up Food Cardiff since it was formally established in 2014, and Cardiff is one of the 6 cities that the Sustainable Food Cities supported as part of their Phase 1 programme. Right, hang on, I've got to make sure I can actually work the slides now. Okay, so that's us. So in 2015, we were working with the Sustainable Food Cities on the Beyond the Food Bank campaign. And at this point, Cardiff decided that they wanted to go ahead and get involved in that campaign. And we had a Food Cardiff meeting where we basically realised that out of all the different elements that we could look at, that holiday provision was one that we were probably best well equipped to do, and motivated to do as a partnership, and have the right stakeholders in the room. It's important to say that this programme that we've developed it's not a holiday hunger programme, it's an inequality programme, and it was from the very start it was looking at the issue of school holiday provision in the wider sense, and you know, we were looking to tackle not only holiday hunger but also loss in summer learning loss, and looking at the social aspects as well. So how did we go about doing it? Well, we decided from the beginning that we wanted to actually form a model that could be applied in other parts of Wales. We thought we were aiming high right from the beginning. And one of the reasons for that was because part of our, we have some programmes in Wales which are national programmes which are actually really ideally suited to the holiday provision. So one example of this is the, I'm just going to grab another slide. One example of this is the Nutrition Skills for Life programme, which is an all Wales programme that teaches frontline staff how to deliver food, nutrition and cooking skills. And this is a programme that we have across Wales, delivered by dietitians to Cascade to community members and frontline staff across the country. And we wanted to look at developing resources for the schools to use, but actually to train staff in the schools to deliver those resources to the kids. So that was one element of a local level pilot that we could easily look at trying to transfer across our 7 health boards in Wales. The other element was using the schools. So in Cardiff, we have nearly all of our primary schools are still maintained within the council. So again, we could look at how we could work with all of the schools potentially within our geography. And we also had a sports development agency, which we have again across Wales, but we have our Sport Cardiff, which is our sports development agency. So the main stakeholders was myself as Food Cardiff, helping to pull everything together, Cardiff Council Education and Catering, Cardiff and Vale University Health Board and a dietetic team, and Sport Cardiff. So in summer 2015, we delivered in 5 schools. We delivered across geographies in the deprived parts of Cardiff. We didn't, obviously we're looking to target those schools with high free school meal uptake, but access was open. And it was up to the schools to look at putting the pressure on those families that they felt would really benefit from coming to the programme. So the school day basically composed, in the first year in summer 2015, we just ran from between 9 o'clock with a morning snack till 1 o'clock. We ran 3 days a week for 4 weeks of the year, 4 weeks of the summer holiday, so 12 days in total. And the children had an hour of sport, they had a morning snack, they had lunch. The lunches are all the school meal time recipes, so it would be we picked the favourite meals for the kids from term time. And this had the advantage of kids being able to try out school meals, which would usually take up their free school meal allocation. It was an opportunity for staff to talk to the kids, and we had a family day as well where the parents would come in for lunch once a week. So during this time, we were doing a lot of influencing using our local politics and developing strategic alliances, not only within Cardiff, but also externally as well. So this was along the same time that Lindsay Graham was doing a lot of work with the APPG in promoting the need for holiday provision. And we attended the conference up in Sheffield, which was really, really useful. And that's when we made the links then with Greta at Northumbria University. And that really was key because we managed to work very, very quickly to put a programme of research together so that this small pilot could be fully evaluated and would provide us then with the ammunition that we needed to talk to policymakers. So we had that evaluation report, and we were very lucky. I mentioned using local politics. So our local AM came to visit the programme. He also happened to be the health minister, which was very useful. And he was won over by the programme. Once we had the evaluation report, then I had the opportunity to go and meet with him with the evidence. And at that point, he basically said, well, this looks great, but I want to know, does it work in the Welsh context? Does it work in the rural context? Does it work with additional special needs? So we then set to thinking about, well, how can we demonstrate that it can work in other contexts? So as part of actually the Wales Food Poverty Alliance, we presented this report, and the Welsh Local Government Association were very interested in its findings. We managed to persuade them to part with some money that they had in their back pocket to look at expanding the pilot in Cardiff, but also looking at rolling it out in another 4 local authorities. So in the summer 2016, we delivered to 10 schools in Cardiff across, and a further 8 schools across another 4 local authorities. We had visits from all sorts of local and national politicians and officials. And we did a fairly significant evaluation with Decipher and Cardiff University to look at some of the outcomes. So this is just the evaluation report and all these resources. I'll give you the links for at the end of the presentation. But the evaluation here showed that more than 75% of the children were achieving their recommended 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity. compared to non-club weekdays. 35% of children were reporting skipping meals at least one main meal on the day they did not attend the club. But what's shocking really is that even on the day they did attend the clubs, we still had 19% skipping meals, even though they'd had 2 meals at the club. I should have said when we expanded the programme in 2016, we actually expanded the length of the day as well as a result of feedback from those using the clubs. So we actually in Cardiff now run the club from 9 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which gives the opportunity for more enrichment activities. The children do everything from working with RSPB. We had Wix coming in and doing construction stuff with the children. What else do we have? Obviously there's cooking and the nutrition package that's delivered to the children. So we also, the nutrition element of it, so the children had 6 half-hour sessions with the member of staff that had been trained up in the Nutrition Skills for Life package, and that had quite an impact on how children were behaving. And obviously with the school meals, we didn't have any of the sugary snacks or crisps or things available during the club. So 67% of children consumed more fruit and vegetables than they would have done. 66% were eating less sugary snacks and 81% were consuming less sugary and fizzy drinks. From the parents' perspective, this is some of the feedback that we had, that 56% of children would have had to play alone if there wasn't a club. 77% of the children would have stayed inside playing on a computer or watching their TV. 53% of parents said that the club helps them make the food last longer at home. And 70% said the club relieved financial pressure during the summer holiday period. And 26% that the club had taught them how to cook different foods at home. And this is an element that we want to build on going forwards, is to do some more cooking skills with parents. So when we arrived in January, I suppose that the time between the publication of the evaluation report in November 2016 and landing January 2017, I think it's safe to say that there was an awful lot of discussions and persuasions and stakeholder engagement to try and convince Welsh Government that this is something they should core fund. And I think, we delivered in 2 Welsh schools in Cardiff. We also delivered in a school with additional special needs, the results of which are very powerful. There's a video actually on our website, which I'll provide the link for, that shows there's the additional benefits for children who have additional special needs. And this is an area we really need to look at developing. So we managed to secure 1.5 million over 3 years to work with the Welsh Local Government Association to roll this out across Wales. We had a major challenge, which I won't go into the details of, but did require an awful lot of tenacity and risk-taking to overcome. But I have to say it was worth it. And I think one of the things that I would say about trying to roll out programs like this and convince stakeholders is that you just have to be very strong with your convictions and keep on hassling the right people. So this summer, we in Cardiff, we delivered in 13 school sites to children from 21 schools. We served over 9,000 meals. And in Wales, we delivered to 38 school sites from 12 Welsh local authorities. We also developed a quality assurance framework. So you'll see, if you go and have a look at the resources, that we have a set of criteria that the Welsh Local Government Association have developed. And this year we developed a quality assurance framework that we piloted in Cardiff to make sure all of those different elements of the programme are met within those criteria. Just having a look at my notes to make sure I've said everything on that I need to say. So the other thing about, I guess, we have been, last year we were in the media an awful lot. We were in the media, I think we had 4 TV crews over the summer come and visit the schools, which in itself is really hard work. And it's something that we resisted in the beginning because it's a really difficult message to put across without offending people. And it was only really this summer that we felt confident enough in our messaging, I suppose, around the programme. So we had a lot of coverage both at a local level and at a national level, which has helped, I think, that national conversation that we see happening in the UK now, and I think is, being part of the jigsaw in hopefully persuading Westminster to part with some funding to do a bigger pilot in England. So the media is important, but we feel we've kind of done that now, and we're just putting our head down and getting on with our own challenges now. So what I've learned, I guess, on a practical level, is that mapping is really important. Both what other provisions are out there, services that you have, and the stakeholders. I don't know how many stakeholders that we've worked with, and it's probably something we should come up with a number with. But certainly in Cardiff, I suppose we've probably worked with over 40 or 50 different stakeholders to deliver this programme. Planning is really, really, really important, and making sure that you're working to a set of criteria to ensure that quality assurance, and then that you're actually monitoring that criteria. Evaluation, I can't say how important evaluation is. If you want to influence policymakers, you need to come up with the evidence that there's a need for what you're doing, and that this is one solution for fulfilling that need. And then promotion within your local area of what you're doing, but with the right messaging. And I think that the language has evolved a lot from where we were back in 2014 around holiday hunger to where we are now, which is about holiday provision, and people saying that it's much more of a holistic problem than just food element. And you can't go far wrong by having a look at the Filling the Holiday Gap principles, which really help, a good framework for looking at developing programmes. At a strategic level, I think it doesn't hurt to think big. And I think if you are in the situation where you can influence your wider geography and policymakers, it's about developing a model, that has a strong enough design, but it's got enough flex in it to be adapted to different contexts, but making sure you maintain that vision you set out to achieve. So that has been hard as we've rolled it out in Wales, to keep those principles and keep those standards as you're getting a bigger and bigger programme. It's not easy. Really need to understand the issue, and the issue from the user's perspective. Know your place, and by that I mean your geography and your people. And I think if you're part of the Sustainable Food Cities Network, or you're working at that geographical level, I think I don't think that's a problem, and I can't underestimate how much time is required to keep everyone in the loop. I can spend days where I sit at my computer and all I've done is stakeholder engagement and told people what I've been doing or what the programme's been doing, and I don't feel like I've actually done any work, but it's really important. I think this bit about working in partnership, Mel said it, there's so many people that are trying to work in this space now. It's how you try and draw all of those resources together and make sure that you've got these shared goals and ambitions, and that actually you are going to have to take some risks, or calculated risks, to get where you need to get to sometimes. So going forward now for us, we've got the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, which is a piece of sustainability legislation, and as part of that, every local authority in Wales has to develop a wellbeing plan. So we've got this work now embedded in our local wellbeing plan for Cardiff. So that's both for the council, but also for Health Board as well. We've secured funding through that Welsh Government funding for expansion in Cardiff this year. The Welsh Government funding is 50% of the need, and the other 50% has to be found through the local authority. So we've secured both elements of that funding. But we've got a lot of challenges of our own. I think, the mapping is difficult. There's all sorts of different provisions. And the demand is growing and growing and growing. And at the moment, we're concentrating on developing a national programme that can meet that summer holiday demand, but there are other holidays. And, I have to say, absolutely hats off to those that are able to do this and secure the funding for doing it throughout the whole year. And the other challenges around, how do you quality control other provisions which may be utilising sort of fair share and that kind of thing. It's looking at whether we can put a package of support together that enables fair share food to be used in a similar way that we're using in SHEP, so that it's actually of the right nutritional value. That, as Mel said, you're using products which meet the school nutrition guidelines, and that there are other provisions, where parents and carers accompany the children. All of those provisions need to be supported as well. So it's how you can look at it from a whole local authority context. I think I've probably just about finished. Yeah. So here's the list of resources. So there's a whole list of page of resources on our Food Cardiff website. If you go to the WLGA website, the WLGA are coordinating the rollout in Wales. So there's lots of information on their website. And I think also I put Holiday Kitchen, but that's not the right one. It should be Kitchen Social for the Mayor's Fund. So there's been a whole set of resources that have been developed around the Mayor's Fund. So Maddie, if you could maybe, before you share the slides, change that to Social Kitchen, that would be great. That's it. There we go. So hopefully I covered everything. I'll hand back over to you, Maddie.
Great. Thank you, Katie. That was fantastic. It's great to hear about the different scale at which different groups can be working at. We've now got time for some questions. So if you have any questions, just type them into the attendee chat on the left-hand side, please. I also wanted to point out that we've just finished a funding round on the Maximizing Family Income theme. So there's going to be 6 different Food Power members working on this theme over the next year, which will be great because we'll have new case studies of action and what they've done to address the need coming out over the next year. I also wanted to let people know that our last webinar, which was in February, was actually on mapping and measuring food poverty, and that's online on our resources page, the Food Power /resources, which you can listen to. So this will be recorded and up there as well, if anyone's keen. So we've got a question. What has been the effect of universal credit rollout on need? Kartik says, I'm not 100% sure if/when UC began or indeed reached full rollout in Greenwich or Cardiff. Katie or Mel, do either of you guys want to jump in on that to say anything?
We are currently just starting universal credit rollout. So we've got, it's Katie, by the way, we've got, massive increase in food bank, usage. In terms of holidays, we won't know yet. I think our rollout started just around February half term. So, I'm guessing it's going to have quite a big impact. I don't think anybody's expecting anything else.
Yeah.
We have this, Mel. It has not, I think it's October that it's coming rolling out here, but we have representatives from Welfare Rights and Welfare Reform on our food poverty subgroup, and they are incredibly concerned about it. And we're currently looking at other bids that we can put in place that are going to support families to deal with that, particularly around IT, digital inclusion and helping people kind of get online. But yeah, I think we're very concerned about the impact.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens again with the earnings limit that's being proposed right now in government about how that will affect free school meal eligibility, and kind of what that's going to do to the ripple effects of that, I imagine. Edward was wondering if there's any potential funding sources for holiday lunches. We don't have a specific list of funding sources for holiday lunches. In the Food Power newsletter, which goes out at the start of each month, we normally include a handful of funding opportunities that are currently open for applications. Sometimes it would include things for that. I don't know if anyone has anything if anyone has ideas, both in the audience or Mel or Katie, you want to jump in on that, feel free to just type it into the chat. And Barbara's wondering.
Sorry, Maddie, just on that, the how-to guide that I mentioned, there is a kind of funding bit of that, as much as, it's always changing, but in there will be some links to websites that might, will have a list of potential funding and also things that will fund this ongoing. Yeah.
And Mel, you think that guide's going to be out in the next week or so?
Yeah, I hope so.
Okay.
I'm just looking at it now. I just need to finish it. I just need to kind of tidy it all up, but hopefully in the next week or so, we'll put it on our website and then I'll share that with you, Maddie, and you can share it with,
That would be fantastic. We'll definitely make sure that is shared with people. So it'd be good to kind of gather their learning and share among the network. Katie is recommending the Sustainable Food Cities newsletter, which always has funding opportunities as well. In terms of the Children's Health Fund, I'm not sure if they're doing another round. That offers small grants for people doing projects. They do two different themes, either holiday food provision, or they also did access to drinking water, were the two themes of their funding, but I'm not sure if they're doing a next one and kind of the time scales on that, but do keep your ear to the ground on that one. Barbara was just wondering, Emily just says that, the school holidays bill does include funding for holiday hunger schemes. That's what I mentioned at the beginning. They haven't put out the details yet, but they are going to be working with people who are already like existing projects, and it'll be limited to England. But that should be, hopefully coming out in the next few weeks. So another thing that we'll definitely keep the network informed of. We'll just be on here for a few more minutes with questions, but Barbara asked, she works on a project for under fours, wondering if there's any data on the impact of holiday hunger on younger children as a result of their older siblings drawing on the family's limited resources. I don't know of anything that particular. If anyone else is curious to hear, I think some of the things I found is more about information on how it's more about how parents are more likely to skip meals during the holidays due to children being at home and not having lunch at school. That's what I know, but I don't know about siblings in particular.
I don't have any information on data about that, but I would say the event that we're holding tomorrow, we've got representatives from all the children's centres coming, and they've been the most interested in coming back, because so they're obviously seeing this is a real issue as well, and they really want to get involved. So
that's good. Katie, did you want to jump in on something?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. We do the family. One of the reasons that we do the family day is because we're actually mostly working with Key Stage 2 children, because we've identified that we can't change the world in one go. So we've been concentrating on Key Stage 2, but we have the family lunches where parents can bring siblings along for that lunch and get involved with an afternoon activities with those children as well. The research that Decipher did for us does show that there's an impact on household income so that if you've got the older siblings going to the clubs, that's going to free up some money for other members of the family to use for food. So I think there is some evidence there, and whether there is more evidence from Northumbria University, I'm not sure. Interestingly, Welsh Government is looking at putting a focus on children's centres as well. So I think it is an area that needs some looking at.
Yeah. Sorry, Emily, I didn't see that you'd asked the question above about if other people were seeing a similar demand in holiday hunger clubs as you've been seeing in Brighton. It sounds like it is a common thing, but I think the evidence is still kind of only just building as it's being rolled out more widely, and as people are seeing that those changes reflected in usage. Were there any other questions? If not, what we normally do at the end of our webinars is we just leave the chat on for just a few minutes. The speakers will close, we'll all kind of mute ourselves and leave it. And just in case anyone wants to share contact details or other resources, you can always post websites in the attendee chat. So if you have anything that you wanted to share there, and I know a few people are connecting already, but if you want to add to that conversation, please feel free. We're having another webinar. We'll have them once a month, normally the third or fourth week of the month. And I believe our next one, we're looking to do something on alternative retail schemes, the different ways that people are getting access to food beyond the food bank model. So keep your ears and eyes open for that one. Looks like I'm not seeing any other questions coming through, so I'll just say thank you very much to Mel and Katie for sharing their case studies with us. It was really interesting to hear. It's always great. We love having different members from Food Power share their experiences on the webinar. So if there's something that you're working on that you think is quite interesting or unique, or that you've learned something specific from that you'd like to share with other people, please email me and let me know. I'm at Maddie, MADVIE, @sustainweb.org. And I've also just put up a slide here at the end. This is from our Maximizing Family Income funding guidelines, which is a number of resources. Again, you can click through them now, but also the webinar will be up on the website for anyone to listen to later or check out more of the links. And Edward just asked how many volunteers per session worked well. I'll just let Mel and Katie respond to that in the chat, I think, for now. So thank you everyone for listening. I'll keep the chat on for a few more minutes. And yes, it is the slides and the recording will be on the site together, so you can listen to us speaking and watch the slides at the same time. Sadly, the chat doesn't come up with it. But otherwise, thank you so much, and I hope we'll see you at other events or have you join us in other webinars in the future.